Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us. We're doing a little impromptu. Let's talk about it. Michael and I were just kind of talking about American rhythm, and we were really actually searching for something to talk about with you guys, but then just started talking, and so we figured we just hit record and let it go. And we were kind of the initial topic was rhythm versus Latin, but then we start, like Michael has the Latin experience, I have the rhythm experience. So we just kind of started sharing experiences and commenting on what we had been through. Yeah. There's a big discrepancy about, the whole rhythm versus Latin. People have many different opinions. Michael seems to believe that the Latin side of things has a more shared opinion on how things should be done versus consistent, American rhythm.
Consistent standard of technique,
more and consistent.
More easily judgeable. But yeah, so that's how we got on the subject. Was it wasn't really a rhythm versus Latin, but it ended up being kind of morphing into a conversation about the evolution of rhythm and where it is now, and
that's right.
And can it be more? Is it is there really a consistent technique that everybody's agreeing on, or and how we got to that point? So it kind of
morphed about so much. We should have just recorded.
Yeah, it was actually pretty cool, but it's just. But as a point of reference, I brought up the Latin part of it to basically say, like, I think there is more of a consistency there, as far as the technique and the standardization of it. Plus, even the steps. I mean, the figures are, more standard across the board. I go one place, I'm going to dance in New York, and another place I'm going to dance in New York.
The patterns, I agree there. I think it's pretty clear that the patterns are more consistent. I don't think it's crazy more consistent. Because closed is closed. I mean, it's pretty simple most of the time. There's those people who are breaking category, but I didn't compete Latin, so I didn't experience those people in Latin who are breaking category. But I would imagine there are still people in Latin who are breaking categories every now and then. It just might be less than rhythm.
Oh yeah. We definitely aren't, and we definitely aren't talking about the bad eggs that go, well, I'm dancing bronze, but I'm going to dance some silver steps because people don't realize that I'm dancing silver. We're not talking about that. There's bad eggs across the board.
But that's the experience that you had that I don't. I don't know. I guess I've been told by Latin dancers, or maybe not even necessarily by Latin dancers, because I don't remember specifically. I'll just say many times in my past, I have heard people mention that Latin is more clear about what they're being judged upon than rhythm is. But I don't know if I would agree with that statement. You know what I mean? Because I think ultimately my standards again would make I don't think they would be met in Latin or rhythm in terms of what we're being judged upon. I don't think it's specific enough. But that is that's also when we kind of gotten to there's a little bit easier of a job to be done in Latin because the difference from dance to dance in the category is so much more extreme than it is in rhythm. Meaning you have your samba, jive, paso, those are very clearly different visually and movement and sound to one another. Whereas it's not to say that mambo, swing, and bolero aren't also visually different, and they don't and sound different as well, but it's not as dramatic, that's for sure. And the techniques that you're using while you're dancing in rhythm are almost meant to be more consistently used throughout all of the dances, and whereas in Latin, it seems, it's not to say they aren't. Yes, of course, we're all using the same techniques because the body only works most efficiently one way, but the dramatic change in the style of the characteristics and the speeds does manipulate how we use those techniques, which changes the visual big time. And Latin has it has those more extremes, I believe, than American rhythm does.
Yeah, see, they don't feel extreme when you're dancing them because cha-cha fast, jive fast, paso fast, samba fast. Like if we're talking measures per minute, they're really similar. I mean, they're really similar. Whereas we have like kind of like
Just
rumba
speaking
style, which,
speed wise, or do you
right,
mean
speed wise,
also
speed
just
wise,
speed wise? Okay, okay.
yeah. Whereas we have the rumba, which is danced, obviously most times in pro am and pro, is danced in the middle. So you get that little bit of a break. So, and that's about it. But you got cha-cha fast, samba fast, stir, with more weight changes. And then you come back through with rumba, but then you come back through with paso doble and jive. So I think the techniques in between the two styles, like like American rhythm, I think there are some, it's almost the same, because if I think about cha-cha international and cha-cha and international rumba, it's kind of like similarity between American cha-cha and rumba. We use the same kind of, like you said, the body moves one way, but we're using the same techniques between those two dances. I'm not really changing much there. Obviously jive between the two styles, I mean, yeah, that's a little bit different because, different movement. But, paso, as it was described to me, I had a coach that said it used to be a standard dance. I'm not sure, I never looked into that, but it was like, that used to be a standard dance, so there's some standard in it. So yeah, there's some similarities, differences there, but I think between the two styles, they both have their peaks and valleys as far as the technique goes. I mean, bolero, I just learned how many different styles of bolero there actually are to dance, and I'm like, well, holy crap. So I see that as being it. But if we're talking about technique, I do stand by the fact that I've been one of those people that has heard and has experienced that, from coach to coach, they may describe it in different ways, but what I'm being judged on is consistent across the board. There always going to be that subjectivity of someone looking and going, well, I want to focus more on this because this matters to me more than anything else, where another judge is like, well, this matters to me more than anything else. But what I'm being judged on, I feel, is consistent. American for me gets confusing because I'm like, well, you have, hip lift technique, but why do we feel a need to standardize something with something called hip lift technique if it was already consistent? So that's where I'm kind of like, things. That's where it's like, is it just a young sport? Hold on, sorry, there's something going by here, background noise. But is that where, and I know it's a younger genre there, but
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of two different things there, I guess, that my mind goes to. The first is the last thing you said, I think, is key. Is American rhythm is newer, it's younger than international Latin is. So no matter what, you're gonna have some people who are gonna look at it and be like, oh, it is less, it is it is just not as good, it's not as important, whatever. And you're gonna have, the people who accept that and understand the situation, that it's a new style or a younger style still figuring itself out. It needs to not be treated like it's not something, but actually everyone needs to work hard on understanding and agreeing on what it is. So the more people who are willing to look at the style and say, all right, how can I help this how can I understand what this style is, or what this style is even trying to be, versus considering it kind of, oh, you can do anything there, whatever, so there are two frames of thought there, and the one is useless, of course, but the people who are actually actively trying to answer the questions and solve the problems with movement, I think, become pretty like-minded in what it is that should be done. To me, you just need more people working on it, I guess. I feel like there are a few people that do understand for the most part. Like I would argue that I understand everything that you're supposed to do in American rhythm. But I would also say that I need work on my understandings so that I could call on them quicker and have a deeper understanding. Like, I mean, sure, I can get any task done, but there's a matter of, okay, how long did it take me to get that task done? how efficient was I in the process of solving the problem? Like, it's not just like red light, green light. It's not just that black and white. It's that whole process in between of how quickly and efficiently you can do something. So I may understand how my body works, and if I run into a problem, I understand how to critical think my way through that and apply the knowledge that I have to solve any problem I come across. But then there's still the question of how quickly can I solve that problem? So there's always work to be done and understanding to be built upon to reach more depths of control and I guess understanding as well. I mean, yeah, but I don't feel most people even reach kind of the understanding that I have in their whole career. And it's not that they can't, it's just that they don't invest the time in trying to understand it. And why they don't, I don't know. It could be because it's a lower style, it's not as important. It could be because they have better things to do.
Now we're talking about like, are we talking like people learning it, professionals learning it, amateurs learning it, or just across the board?
Across the board, really, I guess legitimately, because even the professionals were amateurs at one point. What made you a professional was your study, was your commitment to your craft. That's what makes you a professional. So ultimately, that's what makes you a professional. Anyone, it's just really being able to look at it and take the approach, oh, we need to answer these questions, not argue about what I like to do. When someone proposes an idea, you have to be able to try that idea out. Now, I get that gets difficult because some people propose ideas that you tried out 10 years ago, but and really that's not good enough. You better have done something recently that still narrows that possibility they're suggesting out. Maybe not necessarily tried their idea exactly, but something they're suggesting doesn't work because on a daily basis your studies. So that can be confusing and difficult, but it is a necessary process to be able to get the bulk involved, which is what you need when you're wanting to decide on what everyone's going to be judged upon. Because really, bronze should be clear on what it is technically they're being judged on. We're looking at your ankles, making sure that they're activating on every walk that you take. You're not just leaving your feet flat on the floor. Or we're looking at your knee action, making sure your legs are getting fully straight and bending when when your foot lands on the floor. Or hip swing, making sure that your hips are over top of the back foot that you're leaving before you bring them over top of the foot that you're moving toward. But these things should be specified to the competitor, what it is they're being judged upon, because otherwise it's just going to be left for opinion. And you continuously work on a process that continues to ask more and more from the athletes or from the competitors to show what it is you're asking.
So what do you think is the differences in the American style, like the opinions of American rhythm right now? Because obviously we have hip lift, and I'll say, just from conversations I've had, I know there's hip lift technique, and I know that I understand from taking it from, Bill Sparks and listening to kind of the words they're saying, there is like a more of an emphasis on like a Latin foot action, get the foot down, now the body can move as the foot is there, which doesn't mean that you're not still articulating the ankles, but it's like get the foot down, which is more kind of like a Latin foot. So, but then you have, I know I've heard other people that are high end that go, I don't like hip lift technique. And these are judges. These are people that are high up in that world.
Well, keep in mind, they have a different interpretation of it than what you just described. So they don't like it, but they probably don't like it for different reasons.
We're assuming that they have a different interpretation, but if we're listening to the concept of it, not the, this is what I want to see, but listening to the overall groundwork principle of what that technique is, it's kind of like they're looking at it and going, I don't like that. So, and it would be me asking them, well, what don't you like about it? But that makes me go, well, what's the differences between your version of rhythm and this person's version of rhythm? And why is there those two versions of rhythm? Is it that
anybody who's just saying like blanket statement, I don't like it, clearly doesn't have their own version of rhythm. They may have a version that they think is a version, but if they tried to get me to do that, there would be holes. I'd be like, okay, well, what do I do now? what do I do now? What do I not do now? Those people are just not studying their craft to the intensity that everyone else is. They don't want anything more because they don't have high standards. So if they're one of those people who's just blanket statement going, oh, I don't like this, and they haven't invested the time to study what it is that they're saying they don't like, then they're irrelevant. And there are loads of those in the industry. I get that. But if there are people who are like you've given it thought, and so now you don't just say, I don't like hip lift technique. You say, well, what hip lift technique is to me, because you've spent time studying it, is this. And then you give your description on how it's placing the foot before with your weight back to experience that weight change process and dance through that. So you actually have an understanding of what it is based off your study of it. Most of these people you're talking to, I would imagine, haven't even studied it. So
now I will say,
that's not how I would describe hip lift technique.
Right, and I won't bring up any names, but this person actually does understand ballroom dance as a whole. This was like royalty. So this was like,
but
not
someone can understand what it is and then still look down upon other things and not study them and say, they're nothing because they're not as good as mine. But
I understand that.
They are.
My point was, this was a person that I truly know has experience, has studied one side, has competed one side, and has like looked into dance. So this wasn't a comment of emptiness of like, I just don't like it because. It was a comment of, I've heard it, I've studied what they're saying, but I don't like it. I didn't go any further with asking him about it and going more research.
Yeah, you must ask more.
That's I should have asked more.
Statement.
But the person, you kind of know a person by who they are in a dance, and I know that comment would have came unless it was actually researched. So my only difference of what you're saying was this was a person. This is a person that I can guarantee researched it, and it wasn't just a blanketed comment like somebody that doesn't dance or doesn't like go through it like you said. So I put a little bit of grain of salt into what that person was saying. My point of bringing that up was I'm trying to figure out even myself, why is there such a discrepancy? Because even now you've got people that were dancing Latin that have switched over and are killing it. And why is that the case? If there was this style that everyone is doing, why is now it switched to you got Latin people at the top? And we know how Latin
pretty simple.
And we have Latin people that dance a certain way,
Before I give my opinion on that part, let me just say there is not a single person in the world who I value it the way that you just said you valued someone else's opinion, because so then I just again would say it's a standards thing. I ask for more studies than whoever it is you're referencing or what it has to have more. No one would make that blanket statement without adding more, because the blanket statement is useless unless they're just doing it out of hate. And I'm not a hip lift technique dancer. I mean, I studied it for many years, but that statement on its own does nothing to improve the world. So, and maybe you've had discussions with that person previously to understand things, but just blanket statement like that, you have to understand that people have to understand that if someone's making a blanket statement like that and not reinforcing it, ignore their statement. Because the only thing that makes someone valuable is their ability to pursue what it is they suggest they can do. If all they have is opinions that they never reinforce as to why, then that's worthless.
It wasn't the conversation that I could get more into, because I remember that part of the conversation.
Right, but we can't then bring that up here and hold it as though that word matters. So unless there's that,
I can bring it up because I can bring it up because it was a comment that was made. So that was actually factual. The comment that was made was factual. So I can bring up that comment in reference to it.
That's like me saying, I've heard from someone who I feel is very credible that he thinks this is poop, and then ending it there. Like that's.
But that's not a blanket statement. A blanket statement would say that because I looked at
useless.
No, a blanket statement says no one likes hip lift technique. That's a blanket statement. What you're describing is not a blanket statement. A blanket statement, it
what's
blankets
your
everything.
purpose in bringing it up? Like, okay, so
my purpose of bringing it up was to basically ask the question. Right? My basic concept of asking the question, or the reason I brought that up was to bring up once again, if things are standardized, if they meet a certain criteria and they're standardized, somebody saying that they did not like it, well, what didn't they like about it? Okay.
Right.
Now, I didn't go any further and say, well, they said they didn't like it because they don't like Sam Sedana or Bill Sparks. I didn't bring that part of it up. By me
But don't you agree for someone to
me giving that, and by me, let me get this out, and I'll let you rebut. By me saying, I actually would give somebody, if I've known that person and that person eats pizza 20 times a day, and if that person says, I don't like that brand of pizza, well, it's on me to look further into that brand of pizza, but I'm going to take that person has studied pizza for a very long time. So I can give a little credibility to something somebody's saying. Now, did I let it sway me? No. I just said, well, okay, well, that makes me want to ask more questions about what the differences are. So, you can't ask some credibility to some people. You don't, that's your choice. But a lot of people, that's how you get references. That's how you get business, word of mouth. So to say that, it's kind of like, what are you talking about?
Two different things. But,
it's basically a reference.
I'm just
saying, you wouldn't have a reference-based business without somebody going, I've tried Jonathan Green's studio. It's awesome.
So that's irrelevant. You're changing the subject now. You're
it was actually relevant to your point,
but in terms of what was relevant, sorry, I got thrown off by whatever the talking about getting clients is. What we were talking about, I would understand bringing up someone who's prestigious or bringing up an opinion because it was backing something I was saying, but I still don't understand what it was you were saying. So. I
introduced the point. You were responding to me. I introduced the point.
So, if you're just pointing out that there's this resistance to hip lift technique.
No, I was saying there's a difference in. Obviously, the topic is: are there differences in rhythm out there? That's the whole topic. And I'm bringing up 2 points that made me go, it's not standardized.
Are there differences in rhythm? The thing
as far as the techniques go. As far as the techniques go, is there a consistent rhythm technique that we can actually say, because that's what I was told by the creators of it. Well, why was this made? To create a standardized.
You're all over here. Your question's not, I don't understand what your question is. What are you saying? I don't understand.
Okay, so my question is, if we go back to the topic of the conversation, which is the whole point of this is there a standardized opinion of the rhythm technique that we can say?
No, there's not.
And I'm not talking about what are they judging as far as this is bronze and articulate the ankle, because that's not a technique. We're talking about, is there a standardized technique across the board with rhythm? Whereas I feel Latin has
that would be an example of a technique. Maybe I just don't understand what you mean when you say technique. To me, what technique is a combination of body actions that you understand, that you used to formulate the most efficient movement you can. So that requires discussing the ankle, the knee, right, the hip, all of those things. So when I say that there's not a standardized technique, I assume that there isn't one in Latin either, because I'm sure they aren't judging as specific as I want. So my standards are higher. And my standards aren't unreasonable. My standards are actually legitimate. As a competitor, I should know what it is I have to do to get my score. They need to tell me what I need to do to rank higher. That's how you get credit as a sport, my friends. So if you can't, then you're a bunch of little dancers walking around with your art thinking you know how to do something and create something that doesn't mean shit. So learn how to control your body, and then you can have the conversation. And this goes back to kind of what I was talking about. I'm not going to bother describing what is 1 + 1 to me to someone who has not done the work and thinks and talks as though they have. Those people, I won't give that to anybody just on their word. The coaches that I respect and taught me what I know, on their word isn't enough. So, and they're the ones who help get me where I want to be. So no, I don't give anybody that. And really, I don't think Latin or rhythm has a standardized technique. In fact, I don't think that the judges would describe anything the same way. any of them. They would all look for something different on the floor, no matter what the dance, no matter what the style. I don't think a single person, if you had them write down on a paper to describe let's start at the most, what are you judging? They would all write something different. What are you supposed to be judging? They would all write something different. What is beginner's Latin technique? They would all write something different in a different order, but different. I mean, so that's when I say when I think, when we get so specific about what it is and we're so crucial about how they have to do it right, I need specifics. I need to be told that in bronze rumba, in American rhythm, in beginner bronze, or let's say pre-bronze, that I need to make sure that on every whole beat, I've completely straightened both legs. And if I could do that on every beat in the routine, then I would be able to make it to the next level, intermediate bronze. And then I
So
can
are
be
we
judged
discussing
on
judging or technique? Because it sounds like to me you're just discussing judging, which is that's a different subject. That's the judging.
You're talking about having a standardized rule book. What
Yeah,
you
like
would be judging on the floor
they have the book.
is what would be a standardized rule book. You wouldn't have a separate rule book for judging as you would for what you're supposed to do to dance. When you're judging on them on how good they are dancing. It's the same.
Well, the problem is we got subjectivity. We got subjectivity in dancing.
Only with people who don't want to do the math and get to the specifics. Those are people who start doing art before they understand numbers.
I definitely, I'll give you that. Like we're 100% agreement on that. We've talked about that. But I'm trying to stay on the subject of the technique, which you understand that you just described what technique is. And what you're describing now is subjectivity and judging. And I don't want to discuss that. That's not what I'm talking about. You are absolutely correct.
I'm just saying that the same thing you would be judged on as a floor. It's clear that we don't have a standardized. I'm giving proof that there is no existence of any standardized technique in Latin or in rhythm. So my point is that it seems like we're saying, rhythm doesn't have the standardized technique, but this other stuff does. But no, it doesn't. There isn't a standardized technique out there for any of this stuff. That's the point that I'm making. So, what do your body? And that's what makes it difficult for me to understand what range of the conversation we're having. Like to me, the problems I have with rhythm are probably the same exact problems I would have with Latin. I don't have the experience though in Latin, so I can't say that. But then you're saying, oh, in Latin they do have this. But then when you start talking about rhythm, you talk about it as though it's something different than what I'm talking about. So then that leads me to believe that they don't have what I want in Latin either. Because what a standardized method of teaching, learning, that would be what you would be judged on as well. That's the same rule book. So
for me, technique is kind of like what you described. It's the body mechanics that produces what we want to produce on the floor. Okay. And I think that for that fact, there are books about that. We've got the Scary Great book where I forgot Victor Sylvester wrote a book, and there's a lot, and there's a standard book, and people agree that that's the technique of dancing. They agree. And this is coming from me.
If they agree, then they're not understanding what it is that's being said, because then
I'm going to disagree with that, because that's a blanket statement. You can't talk for other people. That's what you're doing right now. You're talking for other people.
No, I'm talking from experience. Every time I've ever had the discussion with any dancer ever, that is my experience.
That they don't understand what people are writing?
That they don't understand the full degree of what's going on.
In dance?
Of the party that's talking about and describing to them what it is. Like for example, let's use the exact situation we were just in. You're talking about hip lift technique is a thing. It's being taught to this person. And these two people who aren't a part of making hip lift technique are talking about what it is. Is that enough?
Yeah, but I didn't say they're talking about what it is. I'm saying they made a
judgment. They're talking about why. Well, they're saying they aren't even talking about why they like it or why they know not. One is just saying I don't like it. It's just kind of, I guess that's where, yeah.
I mean, it was a longer conversation than that, and I guarantee you the person did some research on it. It wasn't somebody that went.
Then we need to hear that. You can't just, then if whatever research they did, then we need to hear that. Or we need to hear their name at the very least.
Yeah, we don't need to do all that.
But so
that got us in trouble in another podcast. That got us in trouble in another video.
I talked to a credible source yesterday, and they said that hip lift technique is the best thing to have ever happened to dance. Now, I'm not going to go into who they are or what they, but that's what we're starting this. That now go. Yeah, he's like, I don't know how to respond to that. I'm not even a hip lift technique backer. Like, to me, what hip lift technique was when I was learning it, and I studied hip lift technique during the time that I was learning it more than anyone in the world, because I was literally the dude training underneath the guy making it. So nobody understood hip lift technique better than I did, other than the creators. Now, this was 2 years ago now. So because I'm a smart individual, I understand that things change and they grow. So I do not pretend that I understand hip lift technique. And I know I do better than whoever the hell you were talking about. And I would not say that, like right now, I would say I have to study it to understand what it is right now. I would have to do that. But I can talk about what was problems I was experiencing during that time period when I was studying it to a degree that allows me to give my opinion, and in my opinion matter 100%. So
wait. Given everything you just said, now you're saying that your word is law because you study more than anybody else. But when you just said there's not a dancer on earth, even if they danced it, you wouldn't believe theirs. But we're supposed to buy yours. You just turned. You're just making this on tail right now.
No, I'm not saying
because this was never about hip lift technique. This was never about hip lift technique, but you took it there. And it sounds personal. This was never about hip lift technique. It was about rhythm.
You brought up a source and didn't give his accreditations at all. So
and it was not making a judgment. I'm giving. It didn't judge. It didn't make a judgment. It never made a judgment on hip lift technique. It never did.
Yes, it did. Yes,
no, it did not. It said
they said this person said.
They didn't like it.
This person said he doesn't like it. And then you said nothing about this person or anything. What was the point? So I'm gonna keep reeling that in always, Michael. Sorry. It was an irrelevant thing to bring up. So
okay, well then bad example. Let's leave it at bad example then, because it was never about hip lift technique. But the thing is, I can't have my words twisted because it was never a judgment. And the person I did talk to, you're making an accusation that the person, they weren't judging it either. If I say that right now, I don't like the hip lift technique, I'm not judging it or the people behind it. I'm saying it's not for me. A judgment is I don't like it, no one else should do it.
I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with judging it. I think you should stand on the side that you're on. But then if you're going to stand on that side, you have to then be able to win the argument against the other side.
Well, that person not here. But the reason I don't name drop is a difference between not that I'm sitting there trying to fortify my position in a conversation, which is what you're talking about. Some people will do that. They'll say this person, and that's why this is this. That's not what I was doing. I don't like to name drop on this because I don't know where that's going to go with this. We got into trouble when someone name dropped on here before. So case in point, I don't like to name drop unless it's unless I'm giving a reference to something.
You didn't have to name drop. You just had to only bring up information that provided substance for the conversation. Just
so
saying
bad example
like is not substance.
Bad example. To reel this back to the point of the conversation, what is your take on rhythm dancing? What is the technique, and can you describe it to me? What do you think what is your version of, what is your perspective of what rhythm dance is, the technique? And let's start that.